This podcast is sponsored by Logos Bible Software. If you've been longing for the tools to take your Bible study deeper, you need to try out Logos. I've been personally using Logos for over a decade now for both my devotional and pastoral study. Right now, Logos has partnered with the Kingdom Dreamers to bring you exclusive savings. Check out at logos.com/Kingdom Dreamer or click the link in the show notes for our exclusive offer.
As I have a dream, and staggered by the winds of police brutality, you have been the veterans of creative suffering.
The ballot or the bullet
is to either ignore them or to deny them without giving details.
And we stand together to win the war.
One small step for man. Yes, we can. Can we all get along?
It's crazy out here. Welcome to the Wild Wild World Show, the podcast of conscious Christian conversation about the chaos in the cosmos. Kingdom Dreamer podcast where we fight to reunite righteousness and justice. And we're back with another episode in season 3 after a week-long halftime break that was forced upon us by our podcast host. But we worked it out. We worked out the deals, you know what I'm saying? But follow us on Twitter, Kingdom X Dreams. Follow me, William R. Horn, HRNE. And follow Kellen, _K_R. Kellen, how you doing, man? You all right?
I'm living what we call the good life, Will. You know, life is good, life is grand, life is crazy out here. But I'm doing okay. Things have been moving and shaking in my life, but I don't want to go off and, a tangent about everything I got going on just yet, because I do want to ask you, how are you doing, Will?
Man, I'm surviving, man. I'm coming to the end of, I guess, what they say is the end of quarantine, but not really. Unsure how that transition works. But, I'm out here surviving. Still been working in the same place, learning fatherhood. My child's almost 4 months old. So, it's been a venture, man. It's been a venture.
You still slowly but surely carving out a butt-sized hole in that office chair of yours.
That's right. Yep. I'm gonna have to buy a whole new chair after this season because this joint's gonna be so broken down. It's gonna be terrible. It's gonna be terrible.
So that's one segment of people and businesses that are gonna be doing well from this COVID thing is the chair manufacturers of the world.
New office chairs coming in soon, so they'll start popping up along with the barbers once they open up because it's been rough. I'm embracing the full beard as a morning of quarantine.
Barbers, stylists, nail-ticians, and all of those folks, they're going to be booked for like 3 months solid.
Nail-ticians, they probably already are. I know some cats are like cutting hair at 6 a.m. so they can fit everybody in. I mean, they got to get that money back, I guess. But
they're definitely getting in. So.
Yeah, you know what it is. But hey, also, reminder, patreon.com, support the Kingdom Dreamers. Patreon.com/Kingdom Dreamers. We also have a giveaway this month, like we do every month. We're giving away from our sponsor, Fandango, a gift card, $25 gift card for the day that movies open back up, which I'm not sure when that is. But see, the good thing is these gift cards, they don't expire. So even if it's not till 2028, you'll be ready for the movies when it happens. So make sure to enter that. There'll be a link in the show notes. Ends June 1st. So Kellen, you said life. You said literally moving. I think that's very literal in your life, man.
Literally moving, relocating. I'm actually moving states, Will. I'm moving to a whole different state, which is like 5 minutes across the border. So, we live on a state border here. So I'm not moving that far. But the big deal about it is that my wife and I purchased a home. Now, you might be sitting there saying, whatever, no big deal. That is what it is. Even my man Will over here has purchased a home before, right? Even him, right? If Will can do it, anybody can do it because Lord knows Will is nobody. No.
But now he can change.
Right. But no, it is a big deal because the reality is that my wife and I didn't really come from a legacy of home ownership. Now, you might say, what is a legacy of home ownership? You might not even think about it, things like that. But home ownership was not something that, as I grew up, I ever really thought that much about because it didn't seem like something that was for me, And I'm not, going to sit here and sing a song about, how I grew up in the projects and didn't have a pot to piss in, none of that. No, I didn't grow up dirt poor. right? But I didn't grow up with money either necessarily. And so this home purchasing thing for us, we really feel like it is a kind of a generation changer, because as I mentioned, it wasn't something that just seemed possible for us. It wasn't something that was a part of our life and our legacy. Neither my wife and I grew up in homes that were owned by our families. Nobody talked to us about these things, about home ownership, buying a home, and investing, and those sorts of things, right? And so even as I got into adulthood, even as I had fairly good corporate jobs and I was making good money, we were always renting, and it honestly just seemed like we always would. I thought for a long time that you didn't buy a house unless you were wealthy. You didn't buy a house unless you had all of your ducks in a row. Everything was straight. You had $60,000 in the bank. You know what I mean? Excellent credit. Those are the people that bought houses, right? And so it just seemed like it was something that was out of reach for us for the longest time. And it wasn't until the last few years where, we really started thinking this is actually something that we can do. We started kind of educating ourselves a little bit more because, again, we hadn't been taught about it. And so as we learned more, as we educated ourselves more, we knew kind of the basic benefits of home ownership versus renting. But, I wanted to talk about it a little bit because, again, if you grew up like me, and again, I'm not saying, I grew up in the school of hard knocks, but if, you grew up in a working class family or a poor family, single parent home, those sorts of things, you might also be thinking or have thought that wasn't something that was for you or for your future or for your family, especially if you're a minority, right? Because just in general, numbers wise, we are less likely to be in that situation, or to be in a situation to buy a home. And so I just want to encourage folks, and I really don't want it to be one of those, hey, I saved $100,000 in 2 years, so you can too. Not one of those nonsense things, but just encourage you in terms of if this is something, right? Those are the worst. But if home ownership is something that you've ever maybe wanted to do, but just didn't think that you could, or didn't think it was possible, or didn't think it was something that was for you because of how you grew up, because it wasn't a part of your family's legacy, I encourage you, look a little deeper into it. It's the same, like when we talk about college, like first generation college students, you see a lot of folks that say, man, growing up, we didn't even talk about college. It wasn't even something that I was expected to do. It was just kind of known and understood that in my neighborhood or my family or whatever the case may be, that wasn't something we did. It wasn't for us, until, you talk to some counselor, until you got a dream or whatever it is. A lot of times, and people that switch flips, and then they say, no, this is something I can do, and I'm going to go pursue it, right? And so it was kind of the same thing. And it was a big deal for us. It is a big deal because we want our kids to grow up knowing that, no, you can own things. You don't always have to be renting. You don't always have to be borrowing. You can own things. Ownership, at least in this country, is a big deal, and it is available to you as well. And so, honestly, one of my goals is I want to be able to pass property down to my kids, whether for them to live in or to do something with, but so that they have some things that they have ownership in, and so, yeah, so that's all, man. So it's a big deal. So we've been excited about it. It's been emotional in a lot of ways for my wife and I. And I can tell you, man, walking into that house the first day after we had the keys, and for the first time in my life, being like, this is mine, this is ours, it's a whole different ball game. Right. It's a whole different ballgame, and I'm not going to bore y'all with the details, but I mean, just when you look around and it's like, okay, well, maybe this needs a little bit of work, or this needs a little bit of clean. It's like, yeah, ain't nobody for me to call to do that. Ain't no landlord that I can say, hey, man, come fix this. It's all on me. And not that the house is beat up or anything like that. I'm just saying the point is just when you see these little things or whatever, it's like, oh, no, this is on me because it's mine, and I want to fix it. I want to make things right. I want to paint, and get the colors we want because it's ours, and it's just a whole different thing, and I can see now why, renting versus buying is such a big deal, even in terms of mentality. And you see people that grow up, you grow up in neighborhoods where everybody's renting, or whether it's apartments, whatever, and it's just, there's not that same sense of ownership, and you go in the neighborhoods where people own their house and stuff, and they have these homeowners associations, which on some levels probably can be annoying, but there's a sense of ownership that this is our neighborhood. I own land in this neighborhood versus I'm just renting. I'm here until I'm not, So rant over. But I did just want to share that with our audience because again, I hope somebody can be encouraged a little bit by my story, which we didn't share a ton of. But there you have it.
That's real, because I mean that's a big thing, especially like you said in this country, right? Is to have control over your living situation unlocks tons of things, right?
Right.
To have that type of control, and it's also the reason why we see, as part of the reason we see wealth gaps too, right? Because of the ways that typically minorities have been locked out of owning homes and properties, which then accumulate as wealth and some type of protection for family and generations, right? So it's a big deal to purchase a house, right? To break through that. So
yeah, you're not at the whim of somebody else. I've been in a situation where I've been renting a house that we liked in a neighborhood that we liked. We planned to stay a while, and even thought about mine. And then the owner decides, hey, I'm gonna sell my house, which is their prerogative. But that means now, because of somebody else's whim, now that means I have to prepare to move my family before I wanted to. So I mean, I've been in those situations, and just it's different. There's a different level of peace and being settled when you're own. And obviously there's also a different level of stress because other things come with it, but
that's true.
That's for another day.
That's true. And that's also, I mean, that's how like we see all the gentrification and different things happening where investors come in and push out people. If people have ownership in those communities, they now have more control and say over what's going to happen in these communities.
Or they even profit from the,
that's
they
true
even
too.
profit from it,
You could be that as well. But yeah, just the change of control, that's massive. So yeah, it's a big deal, man. It's a big deal.
Most definitely. So thanks for listening, guys. All right. Talk to you next week.
Bye.
Let's get into this crazy.
Okay. We got more show. It's crazy out here.
Yes, it is.
Man, crazy out here, man.
So we got not a bunch of things. I guess kind of a bunch of things, but I want to give you a tad bit of news real quick. And then we got some
crazy out here. A bunch of crazy stuff to talk about. Yeah.
Exactly. First thing, which is, I guess it's crazy to me. So if you listen to a podcast, you probably know who Joe Rogan is because he's always at the top of the podcast chart or whatever. His episodes are always up there. But this dude just signed a $100 million deal to be exclusively on Spotify, which I think is the first that I know of podcaster to sign a deal like he out here signing an NBA contract or something like that, right?
He balling. Is that a lifetime deal? Do we know how long that deal is?
They didn't release the details. They just said it was over $100 million to exclusive with them. But either way, though, like podcasting game ain't making money like that. You know what I mean?
The top dogs. Because, we mentioned in the pre-show, Bill Simmons' website, the Ringer, if you pay attention to sports, you might be familiar with it. They just sold to Spotify for $250 million, and they do a lot of podcasting too. So that's his podcast is one of those that is constantly near the top of the charts too, especially in the sports entertainment world. So Spotify's out here trying to lock the game down. I guess I don't know what Spotify is doing, but
that's what I'm saying. So it's like I don't know whether to be amazed that like, wow, Joe Rogan did so great, he got $100 million, or that Spotify just out here throwing money around to podcasters trying to lock out all the other podcast game. So I don't know, man.
And hey, Spotify is doing a thing. I mean, Stitcher is too. Stitcher Premium is definitely doing their thing. Of course, we can't leave them out. But honestly, I just find it interesting. I guess if you can make your podcast, or if you can buy it, I'm guessing they're going to try to make it exclusive. That would be the only thing that would make sense to me, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. Exclusive on Spotify, yeah.
But I'm curious because like when they bought the Ringer, and they haven't made those podcasts exclusive to Spotify yet, I don't think. So we'll see. But I guess that is one way to kind of get ahead of the game. Hey, we're going to take the most popular podcasts and we're going to be exclusive on our platform, which is free to download. So it's not like it's going to really stop anybody. It's not going to block anybody out.
Just got people jumping platforms, what you're going to do, so.
Right, and that means you get the whatever revenue I guess you get from people downloading. I don't know how all of that works all the time, but hey, do your thing, Spotify. I guess.
I don't know. But hey, the one lesson to be learned from it is this: he's released almost like 1,500 episodes. He's almost there over like a period of 10 years. So whatever your grind is, are you 1,500 episodes in? Because that's when the $100 million deal comes in.
Oh yeah, that's 10,000 hours right there.
Yeah, that's 10 years of podcasting. It's not like he just popped off in a couple weeks. Was out here signing these deals. So
you're saying we got to keep grinding, Will?
Yeah, I'm trying to coach myself into the continued grind. But yeah,
there you go. There you go. So what else we got going on in the world? Well, the biggest news of the last couple months, obviously, has been COVID and quarantine and all of that. And noted that as of this week, COVID-19 deaths have hit 95,000 in the U.S., we think, because there's a lot of back and forth of controversy about how the numbers are being reported by the states and by the federal government. But we think it's hit 95,000, which is a large number. Yeah, that's a big
taken
number.
out. Yeah, there's not much to say about it, man. It's like that's worth mourning that you got basically a good sized city taken out by a disease. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and and it's getting to the point where it's starting to hit people I know personally. I got a good friend whose family, basically his whole family came down with it. Luckily, they're all recovering, but they're people I care about deeply. I know people, out here near me that have been major parts of my wife and I's life that have came down with it and been hospitalized. So, I mean, it's now getting to the point where probably everybody can say, yeah, I know somebody that got it, or I know somebody that's had it. So it's no longer just kind of this mythological thing that, okay, it's bad, but it hasn't really affected me. I'm guessing it's starting to affect everybody at this point.
Yeah.
Not in fact, affects.
Yeah. Yeah, that 95,000 just the death, not who's caught it.
Right.
It would just way over any other country, that's a whole nother thing. But I mean, with that, right, has come all these other crazy out here things, right? Unemployment rate still skyrocketing, even as there's talks and processes of reopening. I forget I have here in Kentucky, right? It's almost 1 in every 3 workers is unemployed in the state of Kentucky. Like that's wild number.
Now, does that include furloughed employees as well?
I'm not sure. I didn't look that up because that could be part
My guess would be because it's probably people collect unemployment. But you think about how many people are in industries that are quote unquote non-essential, and even service industries. It's wild when you think about it. And one thing that hit me was how much of our life in society evolves around people being out and about, which for the majority of obviously for most of our lives, human history, you didn't even really think about because it was taken for granted. It was, people left their house, people went places, people did things. Even when the economy was bad, there's still restaurants and movie theaters and people that have the money still do go out and do things that are either entertaining or just maybe non-essential. And you're seeing now how much of our economy and how many of us are affected by this when, hey, the department store doesn't need 80 workers. They only need 30, to actually function. So it's
it's hitting big. Like I know University of Kentucky here has furloughed a bunch of people. So that's, decent jobs, people making, middle-class income. But then it also said 40% of workers is for the whole United States in households earning $40,000 or less a year have lost their jobs. So you're talking about like nearly half of workers that are just above the poverty line, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's like the poor become poorer, more vulnerable.
Yeah. Somehow it always can come back to that, doesn't it? No matter what it is, the economy's bad, the poor are the ones that get stuck first, no matter what.
Yeah, that's a reoccurring theme. The vulnerable will always become more vulnerable in events like this.
Yeah.
But then, the total jobless count for the whole United States over the past, or claims, I guess, unemployment claims over the past 9 weeks is 38 million.
Yeah. That's a lot, man.
Those numbers are hard to comprehend, man, because that's a lot of people.
It is, and again, it goes to show. Like, I got a good friend who's a barber. You know, I got friends that, just work in different industries that, just been hit ridiculously hard. There's so many people that can't work, that literally can't do their job. The food industry, that's a huge industry. The food industry has been, not brought to its knees, by this. Malls have shut down and closed. So anybody that works in a mall isn't working, and it's the more you think about it, the more kind of astronomical it becomes. And so I get why a lot of people have been advocating to reopen things, to start up the economy. It's a hard thing. We wanted to put people first in terms of people's safety and health and and all of that. At the same time, the economy does matter, and if people can't work, eventually there's going to be effects to that, and we have unemployment so that people can continue to survive and live and whatnot, but that unemployment is coming from somewhere, and it's tough, and I understand why these aren't easy decisions to make about what we do, but we know at some point we're going to be back out here in the world pretty soon.
Yeah, which let's chop it up a little bit more on that. So I guess if I understand correctly, all 50 states are in some sort of process of reopening at the time of this recording, towards the end of March, mid-May, not March. Mm-hmm. I'm back in March because we've been locked in the house so long, but
same
May,
difference.
Yeah, same difference. But all states are at least in some phase of opening up, all the way from California still having a 3-month stay at home and some sort of open up, I guess, to Georgia and Tennessee haven't cared a lick since the beginning. So it's like you got a whole spectrum, which also comes with a lot of questions on, I don't know, how this works, what actually will be changed, how we go about it. Because, like you said, these numbers aren't decreasing, or at least not decreasing at a very fast rate in terms of COVID. I don't know. What are your initial thoughts on all the reopening?
I mean, I think, honestly, we're just at the point where most people, I think a lot of people kind of feel like, all right, like, I know it's risky, but let's just get back to living life, and I don't know exactly how it's going to look or how it's going to work. My wife and I were talking the other day or yesterday just about, people that are working from home, people in our situation. I mean, we have 4-year-old twins. We got an elementary school kid, a high school kid in the house. We both have jobs where we're blessed to be able to work from home and work. But I mean, it is tough. A lot of people have been kind of talking and on some level complaining about e-learning in schools. It's one thing if you have, a couple middle schoolers and high schoolers that can kind of handle these things and to kind of work on your own. But if you have like even a high schooler or middle schooler that has special needs in some way, whether educationally, like that's tough for a parent to deal with as you're working. If you have young kids, I mean, it is hard doing this stuff with 4-year-olds at home all day, every day. And so people, I think, are just saying, hey, look, this can't continue, especially because companies and businesses are still trying to make money. On some level, there was understanding at the beginning. But how long can they go on understanding, okay, well, our work output is going to be X percentage less because so many of our employees are just work from home with their kids and their families, and they can't do as much. It's getting tough. And even beyond that, Will, I mean, just the element of how do we be out and about now? Do we still go to restaurants? It's harder for people to be at a restaurant with a mask on. Like how is all this going to work, and what are the effects going to be? And I guess at this point, it's an individual choice, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of like, should we even shake hands anymore? Like, how do you greet somebody? Just basic stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You guys start questioning. I know here in Kentucky, they're just started opening up restaurants, but like the capacity is super low. They're opening up parking lots so they can sit people in distances. So I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work, man. It's going to be interesting.
Something's just going to be going. Like you said, hey, if we want to go to the movies, are they going to block off every other seat, or just have like couple sections and what, like how is that going to work?
I mean, they're going to have to do something.
Yeah, just to kind of make people feel safe. I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, I think buffets might be gone. Like, but can a restaurant open up now and say, yeah, we have a buffet? Like, we've always known that was a little buffets were a little shaky in terms of hygiene, so places like whole restaurants like Old Country Buffet and, I almost say Cracker Barrel, not Cracker Barrel, whatever one is out here that I'm forgetting, are those just going to go away, And then, so go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying that's true, man. I don't know. Like, there's going to be stuff gone.
Yeah. And then we were just having a conversation the other day about the work from home element. And on the flip side, it's tough for a lot of people, but some people are saying, hey, look, this work from home thing kind of works for me. If you don't have to worry about kids, or even if your kids can go back to school or daycare and you can work from home, how many people would prefer to work from home versus, making a 35, 40-minute commute every day? And how many people live, in a big city or in a downtown area or a busy area because it's close to their job? If you work downtown, you can hop on the bus and go. So if proximity to your job isn't something you really have to consider moving forward, what's that going to do? We talk about gentrification, but what's it going to look like if more and more companies are allowing, a good percentage of their workers to work from home? You could live in Kentucky and, get a job here in Chicago, or vice versa. We could say, hey, you know what? We're sick of this Midwest life. We're going to move down to Virginia, and keep our jobs. We don't have to worry about getting new jobs because we can work from anywhere in the country. And I know that that's obviously a thing on some level now, right? But now that not everybody, but so many companies have now had this experience with having people work from home for 3 months. How many of them are going to say, hey, this is going to save us money on, office space and lighting and electricity and even the amenities that you have to give employees, or not have to, but that a lot of companies like to give employees while they're in the office.
I mean, that's going to do a massive, when you think about that, right? That's a massive shift in the way the economy works, because you got areas. One of the reasons why it's almost 1 in 3 workers in Kentucky unemployed is because the majority of Kentucky outside of Lexington, where there's a university, is, working class, right? There's not this able to work from home from a computer idea, right? Though there's more work like that now, right? Generally, it's not. So if it comes to the point where you can literally live anywhere in the country and work at these companies, like, how does that completely shift how economies work? If everybody moves out of Silicon Valley because they don't want to pay for the high housing and still work there, does Silicon Valley's economy stay or not? How does that work?
Right. How does that affect the housing market?
Yeah.
As you mentioned, this article is already saying that a lot of Silicon Valley workers are thinking, hey, look, why pay $3,200 a month for rent in San Francisco if I can work from home and move to, the Redwood Forest or somewhere? I can move to Oklahoma or back home to Wyoming or wherever and live for much cheaper in a place I'd rather be and still do my job. There's all sorts of implications from transportation and fuel costs and things of that nature, to just how these cities operate, as you said, if people don't have to be there, and even the companies, how does it change the overall landscape of a lot of these companies and organizations if their employees don't need to be in the office? Like, if you ever been a part of a team, it would be weird if you say, hey, our basketball team, this may be a bad example, but or even let's say track is kind of an individual sport for the most part, besides the relays. You say, look, everybody work out on their own, and those of you that are in a relay just come in twice a week and we'll figure it out. But besides that, we don't all have to be together. It'd be very weird, even to be a part of something like a track team or a swim team, if you didn't see your teammates or you didn't personally physically interact with your teammates. And so I'm just curious as to how that would affect things. Honestly, my initial thought is people will probably move around even more in terms of jobs. There'll probably be even less loyalty because you wouldn't have the same level of personal relationships built in that maybe keep people around in there.
That's true.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure somebody's, writing a thesis paper about it right now.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, because even with that, right, you might not have as big a title job, not just because of the lack of relationships, but a lot of times people stay in jobs because they're tied to the area and have to be tied to the area.
Right.
So, like I said, if you purchase a home, you can't dip in 2 years, right? Or unless the market changes dramatically and you make a bunch of money. But usually it's not smart to just leave, right?
Right.
So it's like you're tied to probably that area and that job. But if jobs change in the sense of you can be anywhere and you could just leave and find another job that's remote, you know.
Yeah, I got to change the housing market. How many people would just say, yeah, I think I'd rather live in Dallas, or in Arizona. Matter of fact, I grew up in Minneapolis. You have that whole culture of what they call snow. I don't remember the term now, but people that move, as soon as they move down south. Or as soon as they retire, they move down south.
That's why so many old people in Florida. Yeah,
right. And Arizona. I mean, that's real. People move down there once they retire, and then there's a class of people that if they have enough money, they leave the Midwest in the winter and they go down south for the until the summer comes. So I just say that because hey, if people could. If all of a sudden, both your wife and your job say, hey, you guys can work virtually. If I'm looking to buy a house, maybe I decide I'm not looking in the Midwest. Maybe I say, hey, man, where you want to go? Right. Well, let's move to New Orleans or something. You can do whatever you want. And like you say, you're not tied to that area for any financial reason. And so, I think it would really just change the way society works. I mean, not to be too hyperbolic, but it really would.
Yeah, it would.
Especially white collar society.
Right. And that's the thing is it's like, I don't know how that'll all interact because it can literally change like how cities' economies work completely. I mean, I guess we'll have to just wait and see a few years and see if something like that happens because there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of cons from something like that happening.
You do give more freedom and power to the worker, but then there's also the negative. I am all for that too, but it's almost like with the NBA, it's like, okay, that's a good thing. However, we can say, oh, great, they're letting us work from home. We're going to move to, the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, because that's where we want to live. And then 10 years from now, you can see a shift back to companies saying, we'd rather people live here, and now you're in a situation where you don't live near any of the work that you actually want to do. And so now you're having to, potentially relocate again to catch back up with the times. I don't know.
I mean, that could, but it also could boost economies of places that have more desirable living situations, even if the jobs don't exist, right? True. Because if I'm out here making 130 G's at some tech job in a big city, but I'm living in rural whatever, like I can ball out there, right? And that money hopefully would be going right into that economy there. So it's like you can see pros and cons of that, but how would that hurt the city? I don't know. I bet that a lot of these big companies are still going to require people to live near.
You know what's going to happen, Will?
Tell me.
You know what places are really going to boom the most? The great, beautiful cities of Cleveland, Akron, and Cincinnati. That's what it's going to be. Ohio is going to see a population
coming to the top.
Who wouldn't want to live in Cleveland, Akron, or Cincinnati if they could?
This could be the key to the Rust Belt, though. This could be the key to Rust Belt coming back up because, well, I don't know. You'd have to get people to come back to Rust Belt. But if you have roots there, you know what I mean? You could work and still be in the economy.
I don't know if any place called the Rust Belt is really going to see a boom and people moving there willingly.
All right, fine. That's true, though. The weather is terrible in the Rust Belt as well. But I don't know. It's an interesting conversation.
Everybody's going to move down south or out west. That's what it would be. Below the Mason-Dixon line or west of the Rockies. That's
but people aren't going to live in Cali unless the market changes, right?
Well, people can live in Cali. They just don't have to live in the places in Cali that they've been living.
That's true. Of course, but California still, as a whole state, is expensive. Obviously, it's more expensive if you're in the Valley or LA, things like that. But
it is. What I've heard, and I could be wrong, is the further east you go in California, the cheaper it gets. However, a lot of that place is just kind of desert and crap anyway. So, when we talk about California, we're talking about the west half of the state for the most part. So
right. That's true.
So we'll see. It might be the Arizonas and New Mexicos of the world
That's
that
what I'm
really
thinking.
benefit.
Yeah, that are like and then the Georgia, Florida, Carolinas.
Yeah, we moving to North Carolina, so that is what it is. So, but anyway, before we move on, did just want to remind all of you, wonderful, beautiful, Wild Wild World listeners, participants, constituents, to remind you guys about Stitcher Premium. Stitcher Premium is a premium subscription to Stitcher that includes bonus episodes and exclusive shows from hit podcast hosts, gives you early access to popular podcasts and ad-free shows. If you, as a Wild Wild World listener, enter the code Wild World, just one wild, not two, one wild, Wild World, you get Stitcher Premium free for 30 days. So there's all sorts of great stuff on Stitcher Premium. If you like comedy, you can listen to Comedy Bang Bang, WTF with Mark Maron, or How Did This Get Made? Other podcasts like Criminology and My Favorite Murder, or even Marvel's Wolverine are on there. And you can even listen to things like that have to do with pop culture, like LeVar Burton Reed. So typically, Stitcher Premium is going to be $4.99 a month or $34.99 a year. But again, if you use our code Wild World, you get Stitcher Premium free for 30 days. So please go ahead and check that out. Tell them Kellen and Will sent you, and enjoy all that beautiful, wonderful content for absolutely free 99 here for a couple of days.
Free 99. But with that, let's get a little entertained.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
So, The Last Dance.
Hold on, Will.
Hold on.
This is Are You Entertained? Presented by Fandango.
Oh, Fandango, what's up?
What up, Fandango?
Fandango, sponsor of the show.
And sponsor of our giveaway that we mentioned early on in the show. Again, that Fandango gift card. Check that out.
Yeah, link in the show notes, $25. But Fandango, you can also check out our link in the show notes if you want to get any gift card for movies or anything like that. If you click that link, I think there's a coupon right now. Hopefully it'll still be here when this is on for like 15% off your gift card. So you can get it for less than. See more movies. Fandango. Are You Entertained? And with that, let's talk about The Last Dance.
The Last Dance.
The Last Dance.
Gotcha.
We've been talking about. They showed episode 9 and 10 this last Sunday. And, yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of feelings. What are your initial feelings, Kellen, on such documents that we haven't talked about yet?
That we haven't talked about, because I've already told y'all that I feel like Michael Jordan is the most overrated player of all time. Or he's overrated, not the most overrated player of all time, but that he's overrated. I've already told y'all that. I've already told y'all why. If you don't remember what I said, you can go back and check out those old episodes, download, subscribe, tell your friends. Ultimately, look, The Last Dance was fun. I had a lot of fun watching it with my son, my kids. It was fun. It's 90s basketball nostalgia. It's Bulls nostalgia. The reality is, back then, we all loved watching Mike. We all loved watching the Bulls, unless you were a fan of a team that he was beating. But even then, a lot of people, everybody just kind of seemed to have respect. It was fun. It was before we hit the social media age, and so many miserable people began chiming in on basketball, hating on so many people. It was just fun at the time. The only person we hated on was Karl Malone, because he's a bum and a terrible person. But, yeah, I enjoyed it, man. And there was one thing, that at the end of it, I started realizing was that, this whole thing was kind of Jordan propaganda. It's on some level of Jordan puff feast. They would set up the bowling pins for him and say, "Hey, Mike, what do you think about this controversial thing people have been saying about you?" He would give his 30-second soundbite, and they'd say, "Okay, that's the gospel truth," and then move on. And so it wasn't the unvarnished look into who Michael Jordan was, a deep dive into what really made him tick, or whether or not the way he kind of went about his business was right or wrong or indifferent. It was, again, it was kind of Michael Jordan puff piece, which again is fine. And in this time with no sports, that's fine. And, I heard the point made that, hey, this is the only way that you're going to get, a guy as with the stature of Michael Jordan to come on and actually talk, give his opinion. Yeah. Then hey, that's cool. Like, and it is cool. I'm glad it was here. I'm glad we got it. But it wasn't what it was built to be. Some people, I've seen people say, "Oh, well, with this documentary, we see now why Mike is the greatest." Or it even settles in my mind more that Mike is better than so and so, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, you watched 10 hours of Mike telling you essentially why he was awesome.
Yeah, he took everything personally.
Yeah, so
I took that personally.
Yeah. My thing is just at least be aware of what you're getting into as you're getting into it. So, anyway, what are your initial thoughts, Will? Because I know you got a lot. There's some things you want to get to.
Maybe it's just my lean, but I thought the opposite after watching. It's like, this just shows me how much less of a GOAT Michael Jordan is to me. That LeBron is still the GOAT. That's all I'm going to say. And I know I'm going to get some fire for that. I've been getting some heat for it, and it's fun, But it's – I don't know. It's kind of ridiculous. And we could get into all the sports stuff of it. But the worst thing, I was cool with it. I love the documentary. It was a fun time. It was cool to actually be like, I got to go watch the TV at this time because we don't do that anymore. Right. So it's kind of be like, yeah, I got to be home at 9 was, that type of thing, even though I guess we're just home. So it didn't work that way. But so it was cool. But then ESPN decided they was going to release this poll. And I don't know who they released this poll to because it was ridiculous. So it was the LeBron versus Michael poll, all right? Mm-hmm. And they had Jordan winning every single category by a landslide, even on like the most arbitrary things like awesomeness. That was one of the categories, awesomeness. What the heck does that even mean, man? That's wild to me. But I didn't get this poll. Did you get this poll, Kellen? Did you get a vote in this?
I didn't see
I don't. See, I think they made this up. That's what I'm saying. Because nobody in their doggone mind would say that Michael Jordan is a better passer, right? They said he was a better passer. Said he was a better rebounder. If we just look at the stats, it says that, right? LeBron's got averages 10 assists a game. Michael averages like 4 assists a game, 4.5 assists a game type stuff.
I think Mike was he was more around that 6 or 7. I don't know what it was. But, yeah, I mean, you see, basically the stuff is nonsense, and you can tell that a lot of people deal with emotion. And that was always my thing. When it comes to arguments like the GOAT, my thing has always been with Mike, people are arguing with their hearts and not their heads. And here's the thing. It's sports. It's not like that's wrong, right? It's not like that's a bad thing. It's sports, it's entertainment. You're watching these things to feel something, to be entertained. So okay, it's fine. But the problem is that so many people that are dealing with this strictly as a heart thing try to present it to you as no, it's a head thing, as if it's logical and it makes sense. And it's like, no, not really. I mean, it makes sense to say Michael Jordan is the greatest player ever, but in the way that a lot of people make these arguments, they're just illogical and stupid. Like, and you see that in that poll. Michael Jordan is a better passer than LeBron. Like, no, he's not. Right? There's no way that you can say that and it makes sense. Michael Jordan's a better rebounder than LeBron. No, he's not. And then I'll say, well, Michael just want to get that rebound more. So if it came down to getting one rebound, I would pick Mike. Okay, fine. Maybe you would pick Mike, but that's still a bad take. It still does not make any actual logical sense, right? And so that's what we're seeing. That's what we've been seeing. So even when I've said things on social media, like, look, I think Jordan is the greatest player ever, but he's not far and away the greatest player as you guys try to make it. Or even when I push back and there's like, oh, Jordan can average 40 a game, 50 a game in today's game. I say, no, he couldn't. Like, we love Mike. Like, it's no diss to Mike and everything, but it's different. We're in a different era. Like, I saw Jay Billis make the point. One, he said, basketball is kind of the only sport we do this in where we pretend that players from 30 years ago were better than everybody today, right? Nobody says that about football. Nobody says that about baseball, none of that. But he also made a point. We said, if that's the case, then that means the players from the 50s and 60s would definitely be better than the players in the 90s. But nobody says, well, Bill Russell, who won 11 titles, is the GOAT. And if you put him in the 90s of Jordan's era, he would still be the greatest and he'd be that. Nobody makes that argument. They only make it when it comes to Jordan, and they only make it to disparage today's players. And if we're being honest, specifically, it's people that are making like anti-LeBron arguments. And I think that's a genesis of a lot of this stuff is people are so invested in, I guess, everybody believing that Jordan is the best that they just try to denigrate LeBron James at every turn. and then they just turn into kind of miserable old haters for no real reason. I was like, man, just enjoy watching sports, right?
That's true. That's true. I mean, but in this poll, like they even had who had a better or a more social impact, right? Or bettered the world. I forget how they phrased the category. And of course they had MJ, and we already talked about that. He basically went the opposite of social impact.
Yeah, MJ was the ultimate capitalist. Like, that's what he did. Now, granted, if you're talking about just impact on culture, yeah, I mean, Jordan had big impact, but
that's true.
That wasn't even Mike. That was Nike and Gatorade and using Mike as a proxy. You know what I mean? Like, Michael Jordan himself was kind of a blank slate. Like, his job was to win basketball games, and everybody else's job was to then profit and market off of him winning basketball games. And that's what happened. Mike was a blank slate. Like, people, like, there aren't a whole lot of quotes or anything or examples of Michael Jordan doing anything off the court that is particularly memorable other than the stories of him being a competitive maniac. Right? Like, right. So, yeah, just the whole thing, and that again plays into the myth of Michael Jordan. He's such a marketed figure that people can't separate the myth and the marketed person from the basketball player.
Right.
So,
well, that's an interesting thought too. Just how much, and we talked a little bit about it, but how much branding affects the way we see the world in general. Right. Mm-hmm. Marketing and branding affects how we think the world is. It's the same thing. Like, why you buy your girl a diamond ring when you're about to get married? Like, why is that diamond worth so much? It was a marketing campaign back, I forget the years, 20s or 30s in New York, and now everybody got to buy their girl a diamond ring even though it's a worthless rock. Right? So the whole world shifts based off a good marketing campaign, including who the GOAT is, which is still LeBron. No, but this is a 10 assists a game for LeBron, 10.6 for career, and 5.3 for Michael, so a little higher than I said.
10.6 assists per game?
That's his career average for LeBron.
Really?
It says his career average is 25.7 points a game, 7.9 rebounds a game, 10.6 assists per game. And it says Michael's career average points is 30.1 a game, rebounds 6.2.
That just seemed high. I did not realize. Anyways, either
that's
way,
NBA.com stats. So
hey, look, we'll take it. But either way, yeah, there are things that LeBron does better than Mike, and people just can't seem to admit it. But one element we kind of touched on a little bit, but what was interesting to me about this whole thing was just that element of what is a trustworthy source and how do we engage in material based on the source? Because again, this was initially presented as, this is unvarnished truth. Look at Michael Jordan and the Bulls and all of that. But once I found out that that's not what it was, and that Michael Jordan's close friends were the executive producers, and he kind of had final on some level say over what was in the documentary and not, you realize, okay, this is not like some sort of journalistic deep dive, and it is kind of a self-produced documentary on some level, not fully, but on some level. And so then for me, the way I looked at it shifted, right? From saying, okay, this is something that's going to give me a lot of insight into this, is something that'll be fun and entertainment, and it'll give me insight from Jordan's perspective, right? And so that's how I viewed it. But I've seen other people kind of make the point, and this is like people in my Facebook and all of this stuff that have literally said, oh, well, this is the truth. We're seeing the truth. And somebody said to me, as they were talking about Jordan's, methods of leadership and all that, they said, well, you saw everybody in the doc kind of agreed with him on his leadership style, or nobody was really had a problem with it. I said, yeah, because they didn't interview the people that really did have a problem with it, right? Michael Jordan is famously known for riding his teammates so hard that he supposedly made a number of people, kind of essentially ran a number of people out of town, right? we all know the not incident, but the situation famously with Kwame Brown, how he basically broke that guy's career. He was the number one pick, and Jordan rode him so hard, even when he was in Washington, he was 40 years old, that it kind of broke Kwame Brown. But he wasn't even interviewed for the doc, and neither were the teammates that couldn't stand him. Like you had the Scottie Pippens and Horace Grants of the world, the people that kind of rode with Mike, and then even like a guy like Scott Burrell, who everybody's like, yeah, he's basically the nicest guy ever. And him and Mike were eventually became kind of friends. Where are all the other teammates that are like, yo, this dude was a jerk? And don't tell me that they didn't exist. Because we know they did. Because even the teammates that said positive things about him that they did interview, it wasn't warm fuzzies, right? B.J. Armstrong said, yeah, he couldn't have been a nice guy. Scotty, nobody said, yeah, Mike, I love Mike. He's a great guy. Nobody said that. They were like, yeah, Mike pushed us, and he had a competitive fight. He wanted to win, and we won, and it was hard, but we won, and I'm glad we won. But they all kind of look like they got PTSD a little bit, right? And there was no real dive into that.
Yeah, and that's what I think is weird about it, too, is it's almost like the documentary painted it in a way that this is 100% a good attribute that Michael had. He's the greatest because of this drive to push everybody. Like, maybe on some level, on a sports level, that's a great thing. But, like, that can't be a perfectly good quality of a person, which I feel like they skimmed over, right? What you getting at?
Right, and just because he got emotional about his will to win doesn't mean that he did things the right way. Like, and again, that's the whole thing about the doc is they didn't really present the other side of things, right? And it's not like it was that hard to find. And so my critique of it was they gave lip service to the criticisms of Michael Jordan just enough so that he could refute them, and then they never gave any pushback. So he was they said, hey, this is the critique. What do you have to say? He said his piece, and then we left it alone, right? Even if it didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. It's like, hey, Mike, did you really need to berate Scott Burrell every day? Is that really what brought you a championship? The fact that you berated Scott Burrell daily, the fact that, you were fighting teammates and you created an atmosphere and environment that was uncomfortable, and people really seemed to, like B.J. Armstrong said, hey, it was hard unless you absolutely love basketball to be in that environment. Even then it was hard, right? And so this is a valid question. And I think what happens is Michael Jordan gets a pass because he won, but not just because he won. He gets a pass because a lot of people were rooting for him to win. And again, it's sports and it's entertainment. So a lot of people were provided a lot of joy from the times when he won, right? So we all know what happens, right? With your team, anything goes. Like, you kind of forgive and forget. If a dude is a jerk, whatever, it doesn't matter as long as your team wins. And at that time, Michael Jordan was kind of everybody's guy. The Bulls were essentially America's team, right? Mm-hmm. And so because they won, it provided all these people with these warm fuzzies. And because you got these warm fuzzies, you give him a pass on all the crap he was doing because you benefited from it by the warm fuzzies that came with winning. But we know for sure that there's better ways. We know that, that you don't have to be that way. Maybe that's just who Mike was, right? But you don't have to be a jerk and all that stuff. And you see people like, well, today's generation doesn't understand what it means to rise what it means to have tough love. It wasn't tough love because Michael didn't love them folks. We know, like, what are we talking about? Mike didn't love his teammates. It's very clear. Not a one of them are like, yeah, me and Mike are tight at this. Like, nobody's like, yeah, we're friends with Mike. His best friends were security guards, right?
Which says something.
Yeah. And this is not – I'm not trying to assassinate his character. I'm just simply saying, the things that were supposedly interesting about the doc, the things that, we all know Michael Jordan won a lot, right? But exploring all of those other things just didn't really happen because this was coming from the source of Michael Jordan. So, it was almost to be expected.
Wow. That's the same reason I love Baran, because if he didn't come back and give Cleveland a championship, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Hey, yeah, look, it's all about
the warm fuzzies are enough to forgive him for all of his wrongdoings.
Of course, it's all about what he does for you, and I understand. And there are people that have determined I don't like LeBron, and so they don't really care anything that he does. Like, actually, it popped in my mind the other day that everybody loves Allen Iverson, right? What's the most famous moment for AI's career?
I don't know, stepping over Tyronn Lue. I don't know.
Stepping over Tyronn Lue. What's the context behind that? That was the only time Allen Iverson got to the finals. He dragged kind of a bad Philly team there. That was in game 1, which he won in overtime, and they lost the next 4 games. That was the finals. Allen Iverson lost 4-1. But we play that clip. It is played with fondness. And look at AI. He's such a killer. And everybody loves AI, right? Because AI is no threat to the GOAT. But LeBron James, at 22 years of age, dragged Cleveland to the finals with a terrible team. He did it with an iconic performance against Detroit when he scored like 29 straight points. All right. And basically, he just gets crapped on by Jordan and Kobe fans for the fact that he lost those finals, right? AI gets lauded, as a career achievement when he loses 4-1 in the finals, and LeBron does something amazing and great and drags the team that has no business doing that, and they just say, yeah, well, you lost in the finals, so you're not MJ. Then that's kind of how things go now. People can't just appreciate – if you're too good, we can't just appreciate you. Like Dame Lillard gets lauded for hitting these game winners in the playoffs. And we play the clips and we're like, Dame Dollar, Dame that he's so cold, Dame da-da-da-da. Even though he lost in the next round, whatever, it was still cold. But once you get to a certain level, like the LeBron level, now it's no longer good enough to hit game-winning shots in the playoffs and to drag teams that don't belong to the finals up there. You have to win. Otherwise, all people want to say is, well, you're not Jordan. And it's like, why does it have to be all or nothing? This is what I never get. Why can't you just appreciate – why can't you just say, hey, you're really great and it's awesome and it's fun watching great players. Jordan's still my favorite, but you're awesome. Like, we don't do that anywhere else.
That's true.
And that's why I'm like, some of these people are just kind of miserable. You know what I mean? Like you're holding on to mic so bad that you can't even enjoy other guys being great because you're a hater. But anyways, that's not even what we're supposed to talk about. I'm sorry, I'm going off on tangents. My bad.
Still here. But yeah, the point is that this is a nice piece of sympathetic journalism that only tells one side of the story. Good documentary nonetheless, but you got to know what's coming in.
You do.
Yeah, and I guess we could go on a whole tangent on how journalism and quality sources work. I don't know if you have any other deep thoughts on how the world works, but it is true. Like marketing, the way stories are told. I guess that's one thing to always know. Everything you go into, documentary, news, just every conversation, there's always context. There's always a narrative being told, and it doesn't mean it has to be done maliciously, right? I think that's the problem when we talk about the whole fake news thing that started is like everything's malicious. Like just know that everything is fed through somebody's experiences and context, which means there's always another side of the story, right? There's always a balance to the game.
Right. When I was coming up, my dad used to say, if you want to know the truth about something, read 3 different sources. And whatever is consistent throughout those 3, you could take it as usually being true. And now, obviously, we're not going to get too much into how things are today with the different news sources and channels. And some are very conservative, some are very liberal. And, they're all presenting their own tilt and bent on things. And, they'll bring in the token person from the other point of view to beat up on. And, and those are the obvious things that kind of we all know about. But even just in general, these newspapers that are still, having online presences, a lot of them are. It's not too hard to figure out which side of the aisle they fall on either. So I was one where back in the day, I would watch a documentary and think I was extra smart because I watched the documentary and not really realize that the Michael Moores of the world were really only presenting one side of the argument, and not even that they were incorrect. It was just. Okay, there's these refutations to these things that you're putting out there that, if you want people to get the truth of the matter, to be able to form their own opinion, you have to put both sides out there. You have to say, okay, this is what I think and this is what they're saying.
Right.
But it's almost impossible to do that without bias too. So you gotta have to look at both sides of the issue. If you watch one documentary on an issue from one side, maybe try to watch one from the other side, and kind of see where you fall.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the hard balance for people, particularly Christians, right? In our case, to be people of truth, is that you have to recognize that everything's filtered through context, experience, maybe false motives, but it could just be context and experience. right? That gives you one side of the story, but that doesn't mean that there isn't truth out there. That's
Right.
the postmodern pessimism that everything is whatever you make it up to be is your truth, but that we have to actually do hard work to find that. Because mugs out here changing their whole life off one Netflix documentary, and they don't even know who made it. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, especially when you see stuff about like health and diet.
oh, those are because they're the easy. I guess those are the easiest to quickly change in your life, right?
Right, and people, you see those where they'll present information and it just looks so irrefutable, and you say, "Cool, I'm only eating legumes and fish from now on because that's what
Right.
that's what makes sense." And it's and then you'll see, those are easy to see some different things, and you realize that even though there is truth out here, a lot of times people are just kind of grasping to pieces of truth, and like you said, changing their whole lifestyle and forming entire schools of thought around those little pieces of truth. And, we have to be a little bit more prudent than that.
Right. So that and seeking truth and being willing to admit when you're wrong. I see that particularly with theology as the field I'm in is we're great at making straw men of other people's things without actually allowing the other side to give a fair argument. And the same thing when you're finding truth. You got to let both sides give fair arguments.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I agree. But hold on. Speaking of truth, there's one more note here in our show notes, and I gotta ask you, Will, and I know we're doubling back a little bit. The note just simply says Paul Pierce
with dots after it because that's what I think about this man.
I know where you're going with this, but I feel like you got a tangent in you. So I want to ask you, Will, why does this say Paul Pierce ? Ellipses.
Well, I don't know if I have too much to say other than like why we listen to Paul Pierce's opinion ever. I don't know. That's a very good question. But he said in regards to this LeBron versus Jordan, he said LeBron wasn't a top 5 player, which is fairly egregious in my mind. But Paul Pierce be annoying. That's all, man. He just be saying stuff to say stuff. And he thinks he's the best and didn't create the first super team really out of his own doing of bringing KG and Ray Allen to Boston. So I don't know.
Yes. See, here's how I want to flip this though, right? So I mean, I think it's ridiculous, but I don't agree with that opinion at all. Comma, however, you touched on something that I see in internet culture, and I don't think you necessarily meant it this way, but I saw Paul Pierce when Paul Pierce made those comments. A lot of the responses were, "Well, Paul Pierce wasn't as good as blah 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 blah, so he need to shut up," or Paul Pierce, used to lose to LeBron, so he need to shut up. Paul Pierce isn't even LeBron right. But the point is, it's odd that all of us random internet people try to discredit other people by saying what they have and haven't done. Right?
That's true.
It's ridiculous because by these people's own logic, their opinion doesn't matter. The only opinion. So apparently, the only opinion that matters when it comes to, let's say, basketball is the opinion of whoever you consider the best player ever. Because otherwise, you're just going to say, well, Patrick Ewing wasn't as good as Michael Jordan, so who cares what he thinks? Or,
right.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wasn't as good as Michael Jordan, so who cares what he thinks? And so that logic has always tripped me out because you're basically saying you have to be the best at this thing that isn't even about opinion to be able to give your opinion about said thing. And it's absolutely stupid, right? And you talk about straw men. Like, those are straw men. So, obviously, Paul Pierce is somebody that played basketball for years, and that's been his life. He played in the NBA. He obviously has a lot of knowledge and information about basketball. However, it's obviously also a subjective thing to say who's the best, right? I'm sure there's numbers that you put out there. Like, if you want to say who's the best surgeon in the world, I'm sure there's some way that you can pull up some numbers and surgery stats or whatever. Try to figure it out, but it's still probably going to be subjective, And so all of this stuff is subjective, but I just find it funny when we try to discredit other people based on their accomplishments, as if you have to have a certain number of accomplishments for your logic to make sense.
Yeah. See, so all that tells me, and what most of this tells me, is that the world just needs a course in logic. That's a good place to start of how actual arguments work. I know there's a crash course probably on YouTube or something. Well, see, I need to go do that.
There is, but most people don't want to be logical. They just want to be right.
Yeah.
Because if we're all being logical, that means when two people have a debate about something, then
somebody at the end of the day have to admit it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they should both come to the same conclusion. Because if it's just about logic, but that never happens. Most of the time, people debate and nothing ever happens, and people don't want to learn truth. They just want to be right. So.
Which, I mean, I guess there's two things: knowing what opinion is, and then trying to find what actual truth is. There's a lot to it, but it's what it is, man. That'll preach for another day. But we got more Patreon conversation to have. So if y'all are Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Kingdom Dreamers. You get all the benefits, exclusive Wild Wild World stuff, merch, book club. There's all sorts of cool stuff there. So check it out. Support the movement. Hit the store. Get the caps. Got some T-shirts up there. Hoodies coming soon. They're fire. They're already made, but we'll be ready for the fall for y'all. But yeah, patreon.com. Check it out. Kel and I are going to chop it up a little more on there. We appreciate y'all support. This is, I don't know what episode this is, 6 of season 3? Something like that. But we'll see y'all next time. It's Wild Wild World, KingdomDreamer.com. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Wild Wild World Show. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on Twitter at KingdomXDreams and learn more at KingdomDreamer.com.
We are proud to partner with Fiverr, the online marketplace for freelance services to get stuff done. If you have any business or creative needs, you need to check out Fiverr. Whether that's a logo design, website optimization, social media boost, video production, you can find it all on Fiverr. We as the Kingdom Dreamers have used them for many of their services and plan to continue. Check them out at the link in our show notes.